Year 5. In today's lesson, we are looking at writing week 3. I have broken this lesson down into 4 parts. So we're going to start with the SPAG starter, and we're going to look at the first part, which is to convert singular words to plurals. After that, you will have to watch the video called The Ocean Maker. I've provided a link later on in the slide. Then we're going to brainstorm powerful adjectives. And finally, we're going to have a look at the modelled rights. For SPAG, we are going to convert singular words to plurals. So on the left of this table, we have the singular words. I am going to go through the ones in yellow today. And on the right of the table, you'll have to complete the plural words. Now, the general rule is that most singular nouns are made plural by simply putting an S at the end. There are many different rules depending on what letter a noun ends in. So I have put the many different rules on this chart. So what I want you to do is pause the video and have a look at the chart and think about how to convert the singular words to plurals. Now you don't have to use the chart, but it's there to support you. We are going to have a go at looking at 3 of the words together. So the first one I have is table. And because it's a regular noun, all we need to do when there is more than one table is just simply add an S at the end. When a word ends in a consonant and Y, we drop that Y and add IES. If you're not sure what a consonant is, here is a list of your consonants. Now, because there's so many letters here, the easiest way to remember what consonants are is by knowing what your vowels are, because there's only 5 letters to remember. So your vowels are A, E, I, O, U, which means any letters in the alphabet which are not A, E, I, O, U, those will be your consonants. Now we are going to have a look at this word. I'm sure you can guess what word I'm looking at next. We have the word puppy. This word at the end has a Y. And if we look a bit before that, it has the consonant P. I know that P is a consonant because it's not an A, E, I, O, U. Also, if we look on the consonants list, P is over here. If we have more than one puppy, that becomes puppies. And if we look at how the words change when it's become plural, we have dropped the Y and we've replaced that Y with IES to show that it's plural. The next word that we're going to be looking at is fish. You probably recognize this fish from Finding Nemo. This is a clownfish. If we have more than one fish, we still say fish. So the plural for fish is usually fish. There is a fun fact here, because when you're referring to more than one species of fish, you can use fishes. So if you look at the picture, we have the clownfish on the bottom right, but there's other species of fish here, so we can say fishes. Before we start the task, I want you to watch the first 2 minutes of The Ocean Maker. This is about when the water has disappeared from the seas. A courageous pilot fights against vicious sky pirates for control of the last remaining source of water, the clouds. And what I want you to do is pause the video, type the web address, and you only need to watch the first 2 minutes. You can watch all of it if you want, but you don't need to for this task. Now you have watched the first 2 minutes of the video, you will describe the setting and atmosphere using powerful adjectives. This will be written in third person. You can give the character a name, but the main focus is the setting. Because we are describing the setting, it helps to use our 5 senses so the reader can picture the scene and to help build their imagination. In the corner we have taste, hear, see, smell, and feel. As we're using powerful adjectives, we need to think of ways to up-level our vocabulary. I have given some examples, and you can magpie any of the words I have written down. Pause the video and write down any other powerful adjectives you can think of. When you're writing, you must refer to the success criteria and use this as a checklist. The first is powerful adjectives, which we have done on the previous slide together. Next, we have expanded noun phrases. That is a phrase with at least one adjective and a noun. The example here is the dry, cracked ground. This has two adjectives, dry and cracked, and the noun is ground. Remember, when you have more than one adjective, you must always remember your comma to separate the two adjectives. If you have a look at the other examples, we have two adjectives and we have a comma to separate the two adjectives. So here we're separating blue and cloudless, and here we're separating tall and majestic. The next is figurative language. That is similes, metaphors, and personification. The first example is a simile because it uses the word as, and it is comparing the dry land to a bone. As empty as a bird's nest in winter is also a simile because it's using as to compare the empty land to a bird's nest in winter. The third example, the lighthouse stood alone, is personification because the lighthouse is given human qualities. The fourth success criteria is senses, which I have spoken about in the previous slide. The final one is fronted adverbials. It is used to describe when, where, or how, and is used at the beginning of a sentence. Remember, when a fronted adverbial is used, a comma is usually placed after it. Here is an example of a model right, and I'm going to read this to you. As the plane flew over the barren wasteland, it was clear to see that this was once a place where ships would sail and dock. A lone lighthouse stood majestically, watching over the sea of abandoned ships that were lying lifelessly on the dry, cracked ground. This part of the world looked bone dry, waterless. The obvious lack of water could have been caused from the sweltering heat. The boats and ships that used to be bustling with crew members were now as empty as a bird's nest in winter. From the sky above, a plane was cutting through the cloudless blue yonder. Loudly, the plane's engine replaced the sound of the wind that was skating across the arid land. Why was this land so waterless? No longer was the salty smell of the sea in the air. The smell of fish was replaced with the rusted metallic smell of the ships. The dry wood from the boats that were abandoned here could be seen flaking off. Buried under the dry sand, the ships lay wishing for their saviour to return. Water. What I want you to do now is have a look at the success criteria and see where the success criteria has been applied in this piece of work. So pause the video and have a go at that now. So these are the powerful adjectives that have been used. You might have found some more, but I'm going to be talking about these ones in particular. Now, I use the word barren to describe that the land is lifeless, that there's nothing growing there. Then I used majestically to describe the lighthouse because when I was thinking about the video, the lighthouse really stood out. It looked amazing, it looked beautiful, so I really wanted to tell the reader that. Then I used abandoned to describe the ships because I wanted to show that no one was using the ships. I used the word sweltering to describe the temperature because I wanted to show that it was very uncomfortable, it was so hot. And finally, I used the word arid just to show that it was very dry, that there's not one droplet of water anywhere. I've highlighted the expanded noun phrases. So the barren wasteland. Wasteland is the noun and the adjective before the noun is barren. A lone lighthouse. The adjective is lone and the noun is lighthouse. The sweltering heat. The adjective is sweltering and the noun is heat. The cloudless blue yonder. There are two adjectives here, so we have cloudless and blue, and there is a comma to separate the two adjectives. Yonder is a noun describing that the sky is really far in the distance. The dry wood. Dry is the adjective and the noun is wood. When you're editing your work, a good tip would be, if you feel like there aren't many expanded noun phrases in your piece of work, you can skim and scan, look for any nouns, and then look for what adjectives you can put before your noun. And if you want to be really descriptive, then you can put two adjectives, but just remember to put a comma to separate the two adjectives. There's been a lot of personification used in this piece of writing. A lone lighthouse stood majestically watching over the sea. In that phrase there's human characteristics because it's using the word lone, so it's suggesting that the lighthouse is lonely. But remember, the lighthouse is a building, it doesn't have feelings, but it's showing us that the lighthouse is isolated or by itself. Also, watching over the sea, again, the lighthouse doesn't have eyes, but it's telling us the way that the lighthouse is facing, so it's facing towards the sea. So it's giving us that extra information as well. The next one, so ships that were lying lifelessly, that's telling me that the ships look really worn out and they need some maintenance probably. As empty as a bird's nest in winter, we spoke about that simile earlier. The wind that was skating across the arid land. Now the wind can't suddenly put on skates and start skating across the land, so that's personification. So that's just telling me that the wind is gliding smoothly across the land, might be gliding quickly across the land. And then finally, the ships lay wishing for their saviour to return. So that's also telling me that the ships are very run down, that they're very broken, and that they have been left alone for a long time. Here are the examples of the sentences that have been used. Now it's really easy to write down what you can see, but really think carefully about your other senses in particular. For example, what you can feel, so we've got sweltering heat, or what you can hear, which is the plane's engine. Also what you can smell, which is the rusting metallic smell. So really think about the other senses that you can use when you're writing. The fronted adverbials I have highlighted here is from the sky above. That's telling me where the plane is. Loudly, that is telling me how loud the plane's engine is. Buried under the dry sand, that is telling me where the ships lay. Now if you look at my fronted adverbials, I have put a comma after the fronted adverbial and they are at the beginning of the sentence. As the plane flew over the barren wasteland is not a fronted adverbial, that is a subordinate clause. The reason why it's a subordinate clause is because as is a subordinating conjunction and flew is the verb and it's paired with a main clause. Now I am really looking forward to reading everyone's pieces of work, and that's it for today's writing lesson.